So folks, as all of you are slowly joining in, we are going to give a minute for our attendees to join, and then we'll get the show running. While we are getting started, how have the Republic Day celebrations in India been today? Anyone wants to share? No?
It has been fantastic. I think I see the celebration all over the world, which is really, really good. And I saw basically, the president of France, being invited as a chief guest for the Republic Day in India, which is really, really good to see two democracies, getting together, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
And other than that, I would just say Jai Siya Ram. That's what it is.
Absolutely, absolutely. Jai Siya Ram is the keyword since last week all over the world.
Yep.
Great. So, good morning, good evening, or good middle of the night, depending on the country that you're joining from. I have to say, we've had an overwhelming response for this event. We have had more than 200 registrations for this event. Some, in fact, from the country of Japan, where, believe it or not, it's 2 a.m. Middle of the night. And so what that tells me is we are onto something very meaningful when you get such a great response. We have here a Zoom full of extremely accomplished folks. While we were looking at the demographics of the registrations, we have serial entrepreneurs, startup founders, venture capitalists, folks who are great domain experts across a lot of different domains. So thank you to all of you for making the time to be here today on the Friday morning here in San Francisco. And so by way of introduction, माझं नाव आहे सोनाली संभूस. मी मूळ पुण्याची आहे. I went to COEP for engineering. But fortunately or unfortunately now I have spent more of my life in US officially in California than in India. And as a side effect of that, when it comes to professional work, I tend to first think in English and translate in Marathi later. So for the purpose of our event today, मी इंग्लिशमध्ये बोलणार आहे. जरी मला मराठी येत असलं तरी प्रोफेशनल वर्कसाठी I'm going to stick to English. So here's the agenda that we have today. We are launching our Venture Catalyst initiative, something that we thought of in October of last year, and glad to come to the point of having a launch today. So that is the goal today. And as you noticed, आम्ही चांगला मुहूर्त शोधलेला आहे. We are launching this on Republic Day. The Constitution of India and the Constitution of the Venture Catalyst Initiative will be launched on the same day. Then we have with us Pramod Gosavi. Pramod Gosavi is an IIT B grad, a Wharton MBA, and a venture capitalist here in Silicon Valley. He is going to talk to us about Angel Investing 101. Can't wait to hear from you, Pramod. And then we have with us Nikhil Zakatdar. Nikhil is probably is a familiar name. Nikhil is a serial entrepreneur. He started his first startup out of college when he was a college kid back in Berkeley. He's done many, many successful startups. He's an angel investor. He's a board member of KPIT. And I've had the pleasure of working with Nikhil in one of his startups. But more importantly, Nikhil is an awesome human being, as you'll realize when you hear him speak today. So we have Nikhil covering the angel side from a very different angle, lots of different angles. And then we are going to talk about the Venture Catalyst operational framework. I'm sure all of you are curious to know how all of this thing is going to work. And so Naresh is going to talk about that side of the story. Naresh and I are co-chairs of this initiative. गेले 4 महिने we've been working together to take this off the ground. And now we have a whole lot of great volunteers along with us. And so you'll hear from some of us today. And so the motivation, right? So what is the motivation for this initiative? As many of you attended the GMG Excellence Summit that Anand Ganuji, Sandeep Pade, many others tirelessly worked hard together last year. One of the things, there were many great things about the summit. Most of all, our community, the hidden gem of, excellent professionals from Maharashtra that I never knew existed and I never knew where to find. Probably the greatest thing out of that summit was that. And one of the other great things was really the Spark Room initiative. The GMG Accelerator cohort has been running for a while, as many of you know. Sanjay Bhandari, who's on the call today, has been heading that in recent years. And they had a Spark Room in which we had about 10 startups come and present, and excellent startups, great presentations. Many of the startups stayed in touch with me, after the event. And I realized that, they ended up raising about $2 million in angel investment right after that event. And so, one of the things that you developed over time is an eye to spot opportunities. And I was like, hold on, one event, 10 startups, $2 million in angel funds. That tells me that there is something here. Now, obviously, our entrepreneurs, are eager to get the capital they need to help them soar. But there's actually also a demand in terms of angel investors who want access to these startups and are looking for avenues to invest, as well as meaningful associations with startups, and to be part of India's growth economy, and to be associated with Maharashtra-based entrepreneurs all across the world. And so that is how the GMG Venture Catalyst initiative was born, I want to say in October of last year. And here we are at the launch initiative today. And so, really, what is the initiative? The initiative, in very simple words, in my view, is it is a bridge between startups and investors. And I just don't mean investors in terms of dollars or capital. These investors could be investing their time, their energy, their talent, right? So in the very simplest, form, the Venture Catalyst Initiative is nothing but a bridge between our able and promising startups, as well as the investors on the other end. And
Hey,
so,
Sonali, sorry to interject. I think your slides are not rolling here. So
oh, you cannot see my slides?
we can still see just the agenda slide.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I need to figure out the Zoom kink.
Sonali, you can just, I think, share it again, stop sharing and restart sharing. I think that might do it.
Can you see my second slide now?
Just starting to share right now. So.
Okay. Let me know if you can see the third slide, which says motivation.
It says started screen sharing, but
Yeah,
nothing is being shared.
Hey. Technical difficulties as always.
That's how you know it's real.
This is not a CAN demo, yeah. Can you see my slides now?
Yep.
Second slide?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, good. Oh my God. So I was speaking in vacuum, with all this time. So, okay, cool. So we covered, I think I covered the agenda slide about what's going to happen today, the motivation, which is really primarily to help our startups soar. And I was at this slide, which was talking about the GMG Venture Catalyst Initiative being the bridge between startups and investors. Okay, cool. And so what are the goals of our of this initiative? The primary goal, in my view, on the startup side is, if you look at, if you speak to any entrepreneur, and I've been an entrepreneur, I've taken my startup to an exit. I'm an advisor to many different startups, and then I'm actually also an advisor to VC firms. So I kind of know this from up close, that if you ask an entrepreneur who has a promising idea, all the passion, all the energy, working 24/7, what is your, what is your, biggest pain point? Chances are many of them will say capital, right? And so really our goal is to help, promising startups enable that access or bridge to capital, angel capital, and then potentially in the future, venture capital. The second thing is really something I learned a little later in my career, was really your network is your net worth, right? So, having that access to folks who are domain experts in the domain that you're looking for, maybe finding potentially a business partner who can help scale your operations in Europe or US, or your CMO or your sales guy, right? Whoever that is, right? So in GMG, Venture Catalyst, we hope to enable that network so that you have access to all of these specialists, which can help you grow your startup and take it to the next level. And then for our investors, right? For our investors, I know a lot of friends of mine and professional connections who are investors, and they are eager to really engage with startups. They are eager to find those investment opportunities. They don't know, many of them, where to find those investment opportunities. So for investors, we hope to actually surface those promising startups, so that you have a pipeline that you can consider as an investment avenue. More importantly, I think many of us who are sort of in this agent stage where we've had a good career, over a long period, we are looking to make meaningful associations. We're looking to make meaningful associations with startups where we can meaningfully contribute, not just with capital, but with talent, with expertise, with connections. And so we are hoping to, again, be that bridge so that our investors, are able to find such meaningful opportunities for themselves. At the same time, it's very important to talk about non-goals. Can you guys see my slide for non-goals? Good.
Yep.
Just making sure. And so it's very important to talk about what we are not, right? So number one question we get, are you a fund? Can you write me a check? And so no, we are not a venture fund. We are not planning to raise money. We do not have a single dollar or rupee to invest, right? This is a nonprofit initiative. It's not a VC firm. It's a venture catalyst firm, not a venture capitalist venture. So that's one. The second thing we are not is we are not financial advisors, right? We are not into wealth management, which goes to say, every investor needs to make sort of the judicious decision for what's best for them when it comes to investing, angel investing, which we actually also know is statistically is a high risk, investment. And the third thing we are not into this to make any kind of revenue, right? This is purely a nonprofit. Every single one of us associated with this initiative is just doing with a passion, because we want to give back to our roots, because we want to give back to our entrepreneurial community. And so there is no intention of making revenue through this initiative. It is an initiative under the GMG umbrella. It's a nonprofit initiative. So that's that. So with that, what I did want to do is that now that we have a lot of attendees here, I wanted to launch a poll to get a sense of what type of attendees do we have in the room. So Anand, can you help launch a poll for us to get a sense of the folks in the room?
Yeah, just 1 minute. Okay, so it's launched.
Yeah.
Can everybody see it? I guess so. Yep, I'm seeing the responses. Good.
Can the person that we're hearing the audio from mute himself or herself? Anand, if you can find who that person is, please unmute that person.
Sure.
Okay, so I see the responses settling in. Today we have about 17% of the folks on the call are investors. We have 64% entrepreneurs, and we have 25% who are both entrepreneurs and investors. So good distribution and great turnout. Now, in the next two things that we hope to cover, in the speaking sessions, we hope to actually address. I hope all of your needs, investors and entrepreneurs, covering both sides. So, in the next part of our session today, we're going to have a conversation with Pramod Gosavi. Pramod Gosavi, hails from IIT Bombay. He has a Wharton MBA. He has spent quite some time in the corporate venture world at VMware. And now for the past more than 4 years, he is a venture capitalist with a VC firm here in Silicon Valley called 11.2 Capital. I have been recently associated with Pramod, and I find him to be an extremely wise guy. So Pramod, I am looking forward to the conversation with you today. Thank you for making the time to be with us.
Can you unshare? Maybe let me try to share it and we can get like full screen share. Let me see if I can share mine. Can you stop sharing?
Sounds good.
Okay, is this better?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can see. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sonali.
Yeah, so there you go. You have your first slide up there already. I was going to ask you this question, which is, in your view, and now that you've sort of worn multiple hats, what is angel investing?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so the term angel investor really comes from the word angel. So think of, you want to start a business, you don't have anything. Sometimes you don't have a product, you just have an idea. And you're looking for that first dollar somebody should give you. And the whole concept of angel is somebody like an angel from a sky comes down and say, hey, look, you sound like a nice guy. Let me help you out. And they give you that first dollar. So that's how the whole angel investing term originated. But fast forward, what has happened is it's become more of an investment strategy. So now you see people investing, like all the way up to like multiple rounds, like even they invest alongside VCs, and sometimes the check sizes, they go from like as small as like 5K to up to $1 billion. So it really depends on how much you want to invest and how much you have access to. So let me just
That's
go
great.
to the next
That's
slide.
good. Yeah. So go on. I mean, why big bunch of angel invest?
Yeah. So the biggest lure of angel investing is the returns. So I just want to spend some time here. So what has happened in the last 10-15 years is so the companies are staying private for a long time. You see Databricks still private, OpenAI is still private. So what's happening is a lot of the value is sort of growing in the private land. So so think of Databricks. Started as a 10 million valuation, probably 10, 15 million valuation. It grew up to like 50, $60 billion. And if you're just a public equity investor, you're going to get access at $50 billion. So now you're going to, if you want to make returns like 10x return, it has to go from like say $50 billion to $500 billion, and you want like 100x, it needs to go from like $50 billion to $5 trillion. So that is a trade-off right now, is that the public side, the returns are not that much. So a lot of the value is still in the private markets. So that's the main advantage of angel investing, and particularly angel investing. Like if you do at a very early stage, you can get really outsized returns, like to the order of like at least like a 10x, 50x, 100x. Like if you invest at a 10 million valuation, then the company becomes a unicorn. That's like 100x, right? So you invest like a 50K, you end up getting like $5 million, right? So that's the main advantage. The second advantage is really that comes down to the real sort of angel part of this is like if you want to help out a community, like this whole initiative with Garje Marathi is to help entrepreneurs from Maharashtra, right? So if you want to help them out and you have some disposable income, that's another way. Personal relationship also, like one of your family members or one of your colleague is starting a company and needs that like initial capital, and if you can spare, that's another way to do it. The third one is sort of what's happening today is this is like a very conscious diversification, and I see that with a lot of executives and founders. They have a lot of their net worth in one company, like say Google, Facebook, or their startup, and they want to diversify. So they want to invest in a company that potentially might actually disrupt their company. So if you're in Google and you think another company can disrupt, you want to invest in that company. So it's becoming more or less like a very conscious decision. The fourth one is access. So a lot of you guys are like executives at large companies, and a lot of founders, they come to you for feedback. They want to know more about your requirements. They come to you as a potential customer. So you have that access that a lot of actually other people don't have, a lot of VCs also don't have. So you want to take advantage of that and invest because you have that access. And that also brings to the last point is relevance, right? So if you're a executive at a large company, like you're managing product, you're managing a business unit, you have to stay up to date with all of the trends that are going on. That's like essential part of the job. And you don't get that actually when you're working inside the company. Inside the company, you're just operating, you're just managing day to day. But if you engage with the entrepreneur community, you invest, and maybe you can even join some of the companies as advisors on their board. And that way you can see how the technology is growing, how customers are adopting a new technology.
This is great, Pramod. From my own experience, what I can share is, one of the, just sort of building on what you said, one of the probably the primary reason that I engage into angel investing is to be part of a meaningful startup, to be a catalyst for their growth. When I trust the people running the company, they're great people. It's a great people, great company, and I do it just because it gives me a lot of energy in being part of multiple startups, as opposed to when you run your own, you're just part of one startup. So that's my reason, amongst others, to actually angel invest.
So just quickly going over some of the uh, some of the things that don't go right. The failures, a lot of the startups fail. So obviously that's part of the game, but I'll talk about like how to sort of mitigate this in the next slide. The other problem is liquidity. When you invest in a startup, they might not exit, like you might not get the returns, but also there's a good sort of secondary market now that you can sell your shares. The third one I think is really interesting is like, I always tell people not to mix personal relationships with with money, right? So you don't want to invest in your cousin, your uncle, or your friend, or sometimes your spouse, and then if things don't go well, that sort of messes up everything. So always don't mix business and personal. The fourth one is a little bit nuances, conflict of interest. So so I've seen this a lot of times where if so founders go to executives initially and they say, hey, we want your help and we'll let you angel invest, and then later on they might come back to you as a customer. They might come back to you like, do you want to acquire the company? And then if somehow people figure out in the company that you have been an investor in the company, that can be looked upon as a conflict of interest. So sometimes it's better not to sort of invest in some of the adjacent area that your company is working on to avoid this, or you can just disclose it to your legal department upfront. So how to angel invest? So this is the the best part, right? So one is, the first thing always is to stick with people are trustworthy and passionate about building a business, right? So you're part of a community, like this is the community, you know people. You always want to sort of, because what happens is like even if you know the person is good, trustworthy, passionate, really want to build a business, there are always challenges in the market and with customers, right? So what you want to do is you want to sort of reduce the the factors, right? If you don't know the person itself, that becomes another risk factor. The second one is domains. So stick to domains that you know really well. And when a founder pitches to you, you should be able to figure out if it's a good business or not. Like, or you can just ask somebody that you know really well, like a subject matter expert, to vet it out. But don't go into the business that you really don't know. Like if you don't know anything about Bitcoin, crypto, don't invest in crypto because you're seeing these big returns, but you don't know what the business is. The third one I briefly mentioned is just emotion and relationships. So stay away from so just be very honest about whether you are investing for returns or helping somebody out. So if you're helping somebody out, like your friends and family, and if you can afford to lose the investment, that's still fine. But just be very clear about why you're investing at that. The fourth one is to invest alongside VCs because your check is not going to be enough for the company to go public, right? So your 50K, 100K not enough. So you need more capital. You need people who are helping out on the board, help them hire people and scale the company. So always look for VCs in the deal. Or sometimes you can just wait until like a professional VC leads the round. The fifth one is a little bit, again, nuances. A lot of time founders will come and say, hey, well, I'll give you a sweetheart deal. I'll give you like 5 million valuation. I'll give you a 4 million valuation. I'll give you, a discount. So don't make a decision because it's a sweetheart deal. Make a decision because, it's a founder that you like and it's a company like, so never make a decision that's based on the valuation. The next one is, if you really want to do this on an ongoing basis, you want to help the company out in whatever ways. Like it's something that you can make introductions, because that's how you're going to get other good quality deals. So if the founder is very happy, he's going to introduce you to other of his friends who are starting, and that's how you can actually create a network. So don't think of it like this as a passive investment. Hey, like, I just put my money and I'm going to sit around and then your next opportunity might not come through. The last one, as I was mentioning, on the liquidity side, so sometimes, if you have an opportunity to sell, so there's a good sort of secondary market out there. Let's just say you invested a company at a 10 million valuation, the company went up to $500, $600 million. You're getting a good 50, 60x, and somebody comes and says, hey, I can buy you the shares. Sometimes it's a better idea to just exit and take some of the money off the table rather than think that, hey, maybe this company can go to like 5 billion, 10 billion, because it might go to 5 billion, 10 billion, but you might not get the money back for another 10 years, like until it goes public. So sometimes it's a good idea to just take the money off the table. Yeah, some of this, like, again, sort of common traps, party round. So I mentioned this, like, you need to know the person, like, don't invest because, Mark Benioff is investing, or like, Sam Altman is investing, like, they have that their net worth is very different than our network. So they take more risk than us. So don't do that. The next one is uncapped notes. So this is very common at a very early stages where the founder says, I don't know the valuation, but always sort of insist on, a timeline for converting the notes. And I think Sonali will talk about like some of the diligence process, but always sort of go through the diligence process. Like if the founder is sending you a note, asking you to sign, asking for a countersign. A lot of times, if it's not countersigned, the agreement is not done, you might actually wire the money and it's not legit. Look for commitment from the founders. Like, don't look for founders who are not committed. They are pivoting. They sometimes, they start companies because they don't have any other better options. Look for like really committed founders. And the last one, as I mentioned, like, founders tend to be very optimistic, and they'll always tell you like the best case scenarios, like, oh, Sequoia is talking to us, we are going to close a customer. So the way to figure out is just do some diligence. Don't just like believe in everything. Yeah, I think that's all I had Any questions you have?
This is great, Pramod. We have a Q&A towards the end. I always find your advice, one, very to the point, very precise and very wise. So thank you for all of that. You covered a lot of ground, and I feel like we should actually probably have a dedicated session just with you. So we hope to make that true someday. And folks, as FYI, we formed a due diligence board for venture catalyst activities, and Pramod is volunteering his time for that. So thank you, Pramod, for doing that. I am going to keep my presentation going, share my screen. Give me a minute. Okay. Getting the slideshow mode. Can you guys see the slideshow? And Naresh, can you see the slideshow?
I think it just came out of the slideshow mode back again. So you want to
Okay.
put it back in slideshow.
Okay, cool. So I am next going to talk to Nikhil Zakatdar. As I mentioned earlier, Nikhil Zakatdar is a serial entrepreneur. He has done many startups, taking them to an exit. He is a board member of many large or many corporations, one of them being KPIT. Not just that, he's been both acquirer and an acquiree of companies, and he's an angel investor and a startup advisor. So I am super eager to hear from Nikhil about what he has to share with us today. Hey, Nikhil.
Hey, Sonali.
Great to have you with us. So Nikhil, my first question for you is, you've kind of seen it all. I mean, all kinds of angles, right? So it's in your view, right? What makes the right startup to invest in from an angel investor's perspective?
Sonali, first of all, thank you for having me. This first question has been answered so comprehensively and so well by Pramod. I loved Pramod the two sections which I think everyone should take note of is your why you shouldn't angel invest. Probably that's the first slide I would look at, because having now done this for 25 years, I think you caught all the pitfalls that attract people to angel investing because it is cool, and cool is not a good reason to invest. In fact, cool leads to a lot of disappointment. So I think the why you shouldn't angel invest slide from Pramod should be put up as maybe top of this, if you decide to create a website for this. And the other thing that I think was also very useful to understand are all the points brought up in the common traps in angel investing. There were a couple of slides on that, and I thought that was very comprehensive, captured a lot of things. And I wish I had met Pramod 25 years back. But I'm assuming, Pramod, you also learned some of these lessons the hard way. And that's, I guess, is the power of experience that we have got. But for those on the call, if you're just starting out, more than anything else, look through those two slides. And I think that probably captures it better than anything I can say or add to it. I think it was very comprehensive, Sonali.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, from your view, right? I mean, you've been a serial entrepreneur, right? So what makes a good angel investor, right? So you've seen it from the other side of the table. What makes a good angel investor for you?
I think that is something that I have really had a chance to experience across multiple startups. In some, I had angel investors, in some, I directly had institutional investors from the first round. But across all of them, I think I learned a few lessons. One is, as an entrepreneur, I want to absolutely take money from someone I know well enough. And the reason I want to do that is I want to know what their motivation is in being an angel investor. Again, if it's to be cool because they like the sound of what I say, but don't really understand it, or their expectations are unrealistic. Yeah. Those are all red flags in my mind as an entrepreneur. I've found a great angel investor will be able to add value. In the worst case, they'll stay out of the way. Okay. The worst angel investors are the ones who don't add value, but yet continuously send you emails. Hey, how's it going? When am I going to get a return? I've heard this rumor from somebody else about this space. Educate me about why it's true or why. I mean, they end up becoming a waste of time. And I'm just being very blunt about it so that it helps both entrepreneurs and investors avoid those things. Is take money from someone is doing it for the right reasons, understands what they're getting into. 98% or whatever that metric is that of startups fail. And so as an angel investor, if I talk to an angel investor, the first thing I ask them is, how much does this money that you're putting in matter? It's all hard-earned money, right? Every dollar matters. But if you lose it, what is it going to mean to you? Right? If they say, well, this does mean a lot to me, I'll say, then don't invest in my company at least, because you should never be investing in a startup as an angel investor any amount that you're going to get hurt by missing, right? And so I would absolutely ask any angel investor I'm considering a few questions. One is, how much does that money mean to you if it were to go away? Because there's a high probability it's going to disappear. Number two, what's your time horizon? Because angel investors come in much earlier, which means they have to be patient for much longer before they get a return, if they get a return. And third is, what's your primary objective in making this investment? Some people's answer is, you know what, I like this space, I've been following it for a while, and I think I can add value by opening up some doors with potential partners, customers, employees who would be a good fit. Some people's motivation is, I want to learn about this space, but don't worry, I'm not going to do it at your expense. I'm just going to observe, watch, and through that process learn, but I'm not going to come in your way. There are different motivations, and I want to understand if that motivation is something that works for them and works for me as the entrepreneur. If it's only going to work for one or the other, it's not going to be sustainable. So I would say that that is critical. Finding people who preferably believe in the mission of the company, I think I have found to be very energizing as an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, and there are, what I think you said, 60% odd of this group are entrepreneurs. Most days are pretty tough. And, at those times, you want to have a conversation with someone who gives you a different perspective about the space because they've been following it. They have something to add, a new perspective. And I think surrounding yourself with people who can add value to your thought process is very helpful. Sometimes they come in the form of advisors. Sometimes they come in the form of angel investors. Sometimes they come in the form of board members. Sometimes they come in the form of friends. But since we're talking about angel investors, I have found some angel investors that I've dealt with be amazingly insightful in their perspective as a consumer. Right? As an example, right now, one of the things I work on is the preventive space, and Sonali, you and I have spoken about this, and that's something that all of us think about, but some of us have an even more amazing sense of insight into how they would think about it as a customer, right, as a consumer. And so I want to find people who preferably believe in the mission and therefore can add value in some way or the other. And one of the most practical things that I've found, and this sounds like such a trivial thing, but there are, you end up having a lot of angel investors, right, on your cap table. Because in the beginning, they're putting in 5, 10, 25K checks. And if you want to raise a $500,000 angel round, you've got quite a number of angel investors on your cap table. And then it comes time for an exit. And you have to sit and chase down, 30 people to get the acquisition completed, because most acquirers don't want to have to deal with people coming in later and making claims because we couldn't get their signature. Now, there are some ways to get around it, but even in spite of having all of that in the bylaws, I've found that most acquirers, I've gone through 4 acquisitions as an entrepreneur, and each time they wanted every angel investor to sign off. And tracking them down can sometimes be the hardest thing. It sounds, like I said, it sounds so trivial, but let me tell you, if you are an entrepreneur, make sure you know how to get to them. Otherwise, it'll hold up your acquisition. So those are some of the, from serious to not so serious, but important things that I look for as an entrepreneur when I'm thinking about the right type of angel investors.
That's very wise advice, Nikhil. So it's not just capital, but it's wise capital that we should be looking for. And then not just people, but great people that we should be looking for when we look for, as an entrepreneur, when we're looking for an angel investor. That's great. So great advice from you covering both sides. And I feel like you actually also kind of brought about your experience firsthand into this. Anything else you'd like to add, Nikhil?
No, I mean, I think just in general, and maybe at the point of repeating some of what Pramod said, the most startups fail. And I think just being aware of that as an angel investor is very important. And it sounds like such a trivial thing to say, right? Everybody knows most startups fail. But yet, most of us, when we go into a startup as an investor, we think, but you know what? We are so smart. We have figured it out. They've got some good customer deals and some good customer traction, and their technology IP is great. But the reality is, we don't live in that startup on a day-to-day basis. We are hearing all of this secondhand. And how do you know? And maybe it's worthwhile giving some examples, Sonali, to from my own experience, both as and maybe from the point of view of being an angel investor. What are examples that where I was blindsided, even though I thought I was so smart and I knew what to look for? Would that be valuable, Sonali, for me to just give some examples?
Sure.
So, I remember there was one startup, and it was a company that was this was maybe more than 10 years back. They were at that point in this hot space of video-based security, right? They could analyze video feeds of security cameras and figure out, what went wrong and when it went wrong and so on. And this was such a hot space at that point in time. The who's who was investing, and it almost became like this feeding frenzy because one person invested and he was so impressed, he talked it up, and others who heard it said, "Wow, I'm also going to invest." And then it almost like, okay, this person invested, so this person invested, and Theranos is another great example of that. But I experienced that, and it's very easy to get sucked into that hype chamber, and each of us seemed to convince the other to put in money. That company ended up raising a lot of money, and in the end, it failed. That in itself is not surprising, right? Most startups fail, so that's not the problem. The problem was the due diligence that was done in the midst of all this hype was minimal, and that's one of the traps, right? As an angel investor, who are you counting on to do the due diligence, right? Most angel investors don't have the wherewithal to do to do due diligence. So who are you counting on? How do you know the angel investing, the due diligence has been done correctly? And so I think that's one of the things that is a trap to absolutely look out for. When you go in, you should be able to answer the question for yourself: who did the due diligence, and what was asked, what were the answers, and if that sounds reasonable to you, go ahead. Doesn't mean it's going to succeed, but at least you're getting rid of all the obvious things that should have been asked and were not asked because everyone thought somebody else had asked that question, right? And this is especially true if if you're not investing along with an institutional investor. An institutional investor, a typical VC, will do their due diligence. But if it's only angels, the question is, who does the onus lie on to do the due diligence? Right?
Yeah.
So I would say that was one pretty important learning early on. And so you have to always know who that person is or who that entity is. A second one I remember was in the gaming space in India. And there, the issue was that it failed. Actually, the strange part is it did not fail, but it failed for me from my perspective as an angel. And that is another pretty big red flag, right? It is the guy started the company, spoke it up, Y Combinator, lot of excitement, got a lot of people involved, did not keep his investors up to date, right? Like, for example, I, as an entrepreneur, send out a quarterly newsletter to all my investors. Doesn't matter whether they're a $5,000 investor or a $5 million investor. This guy never did. So, I would check in with him every now and then. Hey, all good. Anything I can do to be of help? And he would either take the help or say, no, at this point, I don't need the help. But there was never any information forthcoming from him. And that was okay, whatever. Busy, I'm sure he's pretty busy and so on. Over the years, I learned that he had, started a new entity and moved some of this into that new entity. And then from that, he had taken investors into that new entity. And then that somehow might not have worked either. And so he started another entity. And so he kept moving entities and his investors kept changing. To me, I mean, that borders on fraudulent. But which angel investor has the time, bandwidth, or money to do anything about it? You sort of write it off. But again, lesson learned, right? Is
Yeah.
I did not know that person as well. And so, don't invest in people that you don't really know, have good character. It's already a hard journey. Then when you see that the company now, 10 years later, 12 years later, that company is seeming to be doing very well. Like I said, the company didn't fail, but my investment is worth nothing.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. So great, I think, capture of pitfalls, Nikhil, in terms of what not to do. And I think I'm liking that this conversation is real in terms of, we covered sort of, you can get an outsized return from what the pitfalls are to be avoided for, as well as the due diligence process. I mean, having said that, I mean, there is still trillions of dollars in venture capital that are invested in a lot of startups. So it is still, it is still a worthwhile avenue. Keeping in mind all the red flags and orange flags that you, Nikhil, as well as Pramod, highlighted. I know
Well, can I just add one last comment? Because I don't want to end on the bad note, right? I mean, I've had some very, very exciting successes, not because of anything I did, but sometimes you get lucky. But these were examples of companies that actually met all these things that I spoke about, right? If you do this and this and this, and there's a company called Genies, and a company called Shoptimize, and Shoptimize ended up having an exit. Genies, I came in investing into a guy who was a sophomore in undergrad. Okay, that was 12, 13 years back. Today, that company is a multi-billion-dollar company, and everything that that between Pramod and I we just mentioned were all true. A guy we knew, a guy who, great character, there was due diligence done correctly, blah, blah, all the things. And so it can be very, very lucrative, but it has to be done with all these points. I just wanted to end on a slightly more positive note than.
I'm glad you did that. I'm glad you did that because, and that's very important, which is, we are investing and associating as investors with all of these startups, but, make sure to have your right checklists done before you make that decision. Thank you, Nikhil, for all of that hard-earned wisdom that you shared with us. I then now wanted to hand over to Naresh, who's going to talk about the operational framework for how Venture Catalyst is going to perform and what are we going to do. So Naresh, off to you to speak about the real stuff.
थँक्यू सोनाली, थँक्यू सोनाली. आणि सर्वप्रथम सगळ्यांना प्रजासत्ताक दिनाच्या हार्दिक शुभेच्छा. आणि I'm glad की we get to launch the Venture Catalyst program on such an auspicious day. आणि त्या उपक्रमाचा एक हातभार लावता आला म्हणून जीएमजी आणि आनंद दोघांचे स्वतः आभार मानू इच्छितो पहिले. आणि next up, I wanted to thank you, Sonali, of course, for being the trigger to make this happen. And of course, followed that by Pramod and Nikhil for a very informative session. Very practical advice, good anecdotes. Hopefully everybody is learning from all of that. There was no mincing of words, which is what I like. No beating around the bush. You get straight advice. And we hope to bring similar content through this initiative to budding entrepreneurs as well as angels, right? So which actually is a good segue into this slide here. So what's the charter for us? And in general, I would say it is aligned with the GMG overall charter. And that's, in a nutshell, if I can boil it down, is basically to help the worldwide Marathi and Maharashtrian community, right? And within that, we are looking at the entrepreneurial track of within the community who are interested in launching a venture or investing in a venture, right? And so what and I mentioned this in the November meeting that had happened is mainly the way we define help in this case is primarily along three angles, right? Is access to capital, access to customers, and access to talent to deliver on those promises that you make to customers. I would like to add one more thing into that today, and that is basically getting these insights from people who have walked the path before you. So you heard Pramod, you heard Nikhil today, and I'm pretty sure you have learned a lot. And you will, if you reflect on it after the meeting, you will have your own insights that you can implement in your line of business, as well as hopefully come back and be part of this show, right? Be part of this initiative and pay it forward to other founders and other angel investors. So from a charter perspective for startups, we are kind of putting a line around which startups we want to primarily engage with, right? And again, staying with the overall GMG charter, the general criteria that we are putting forth is that for the startups that we want to engage with, we want at least one founder to be from Maharashtra or of Maharashtrian origin. So they don't have to be residing in Maharashtra, but they would be anywhere else in the world, but they are from Maharashtrian origin. The last one, and that is also important, is that even if you don't fall into these two categories, if you are creating opportunities in or for Maharashtra, state of Maharashtra, we would still want to engage with you. Because again, that is the overall charter that GMG promotes, and that's what we want to carry on forward as well. On the investor side, that's pretty straightforward, is the members of the GMG community, whomsoever is involved with GMG is welcome. And you heard the why not to angel invest from Pramod. So hopefully you get to do your own thinking about, is this something that you find to be in line with your values, and then decide to invest. Just to be underlining what Sonali said earlier today, this is not a venture fund. We are not here to give individual advice on a specific deal. Of course, that being said, there are definitely few helping artifacts that we can share with you. So Sonali, if you could go to the next slide. That kind of gives you the overall framework in a nice slide format. But basically at the foundation, we have the GMG community and partners, and that's really forms the ecosystem from where most of these interactions are going to happen. right? Most of the startups as well as angel investors would be coming from that. And partners also play an important role. I'll talk briefly in a minute about that. But the three pillars that make this all possible are deal flow, investor engagement, and due diligence. And they're all equally important. And they all need to be successful in order for the overall initiative to be successful. So together, these three pillars support the venture catalyst initiative. So from a deal flow perspective, we are expecting that the deal flow could be happening directly, as in startups apply for potential angel investor engagement, and we'll be sharing with you how to get in touch and how it proceeds from there. It could come from GMG community's referral. When you hear somebody say, okay, I know this company, and you know how you have this initiative, so maybe you should talk to them, or ask the founding team to get in touch with us. Or it could be coming from partner organizations, angel as well as VC organizations that could be referring deals to us that we could entertain here. In terms of investor engagement, the induction will be via invite or referral. Again, we'll be talking about how to get involved, how to become part of this as an angel investor in a minute or so. And we will be putting out content in the ongoing sessions. Hopefully you learned a lot as an angel investor, as well as heard the side of an entrepreneur when they look at angel investing and what they should be looking at. Sometimes they do not, but they should be. And that hopefully makes you a better angel investor as well as a better entrepreneur when you're raising capital, right? And finally, we'll be also doing the deal support when investors do decide to get into a specific transactions. And that brings me to the third pillar, and that's the due diligence due diligence pillar. And we are anticipating a multi-level due diligence, if you will, wherein there'll be gates along the way, and we would like to have startups clear multiple of those gates. And the reason for doing that is because if you do not pass a certain gate, that's not necessarily an end of the road for you. We can still probably help you, probably steer you in a different path, so that, because maybe you're not ready to raise the capital necessarily, but that doesn't mean you should just simply give up. If you're still passionate about the overall space and the product that you're building, we still want to help you. On the due diligence side, we also want to provide templates for potential investors, so that they can evaluate the particular company they are interested in, and finally guide investor syndicates. So the idea here is that the community overall comes together. We do have these periodic sessions on an ongoing basis, but when a particular deal is presented and there are multiple people who are interested in, they will find a way to group together and do their due diligence. And at that point in time, these templates can help them. And that's overall is how we want to keep the role of venture capitalists in general. Not get involved in a specific transaction, but provide the framework that can be used and adopted and adapted to a specific need. So that's the overall what I have to say. Sonali, over to you, and you can help everybody involved. The $1 billion question on everybody's mind: how do I get involved?
Yes, absolutely. So here we have two links. So if you are an investor and are interested in staying tuned with everything that GMG Venture Catalyst is doing, as well as potential promising startups, you have a link up there. Take a minute to go in there, and it should be a quick registration. And if you are a startup, which looks like 60% of you are, and you're looking to, you're interested in raising capital, then there's a link in there for you to do that. And then if you are a volunteer, right, if you bring talent, passion, enthusiasm towards this initiative, we're certainly looking for more volunteers. I did want to call out the existing volunteers that are making this possible. Besides Naresh and I, we have Anand Darvi, who's helping facilitating today's call. He's a great volunteer. We have actually a due diligence team put together. We have Abhi Nadgir, who has a good background in private equity. We have Ajit Ketkar, who is a great Wall Street guy, seasoned executive, as well as Pramod, who are sort of helping on the due diligence side. Also, because sort of building onto the discussions today, we realized due diligence is a big part of it. And so we are hoping to do the pre-due diligence before we let investors do their own due diligence and make the right investment decision for them. So that's all the content we have for today. I know we are short on time, but if there are any more Q&As, myself and Naresh will be around. Feel free to ask us questions. We are right here for you guys.
I think
Pritam here. Really great insights and what a star-struck panel. I'm wondering, like, how do we see this working in collaboration with Bhav Institute's incubator? They're also doing some of the work, similarly helping startups, etc. Anything you can share with that?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that question, Preetham. So I think the way we see this is it's sort of a global platform, right? So the startups can come from Maharashtra. They can very well come from Bhav Institute. I know Bhav Institute is doing lots of great work here. And so at the same time, the startups could come from Germany or Japan or US or anywhere others. So what we're looking to do is from our deal flow side, we want to build partnerships with Bhav Institute and others like you, so that those startups get to now leverage this initiative that's going to foster overall entrepreneurship.
Awesome.
And so, Preetham, if you can drop, a note to the email that I had earlier, we'd love to talk to you offline and establish that partnership.
Yeah, so now could you put that slide up again so that people can make a note? I think there was a request. The one before, I think that has all three.
All three. There.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool.
Hey, Sonali.
Hey.
First of all, really good session. It's also good to see Nikhil as part of the session. So very interesting. Couple of things I would like to highlight on top of what Pramod and Nikhil talked about is every entrepreneur should understand that angel investors invest with their own money and VCs invest with the LP's money. So that's a big difference. So the risk is very different for each group of people. The second thing is what I think Nikhil touched upon is for a startup, if there are a lot of angel investors investing, they come on the cap table, which could be cumbersome. So going forward, it will be good to know if GMG has an interest in forming kind of the overarching entity, and when people invest, they can invest as a syndicate with GMG as the overarching entity, so that on the cap table, it just looks like one entity rather than 50 different individual people. So that's a suggestion or thought that I have. So
yeah, good suggestion, Manohar. I think we have discussed and debated that one. I think as you can see, this is sort of day zero, well, maybe day one of this initiative. And so this year, what we plan to do is, like I said, be the bridge, but at a later point, depending on the scale of where this goes, and if it helps both our investors and startups, maybe in later years, we can consider like an SPV creation or stuff like that, so that we can syndicate, or somebody can syndicate. Again, GMG is never going to be a fund. That's not the goal, right? So it's not that, but just to help our investors, invest, and then our startups have one entity on the cap table as opposed to many. We could do an SPV type of thing, and maybe that's in the card for later years. But great suggestion. Thank you. Any more questions, comments? Going once, twice. Gone. Okay, cool. Thank you, folks, for making the time to attend today. Special thanks to Pramod and Nikhil, as well as all of our volunteers, who are sparing their precious time to help get this initiative off the ground. Stay tuned, and again, hope to hear from those of you who'd like to contribute meaningfully. Yeah, let's get this show running.
Thank you. That was a great session today. Appreciate it. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.